Hello and welcome to Should You Play, where we highlight the best and worst aspects of video games, show some spoiler-free gameplay footage to whet your appetite, and hopefully help our viewers to avoid that dreaded buyer's remorse.
Today we want to talk about Horizon Forbidden West, an open-world RPG released in 2021 that was greatly anticipated for a long time but seems to have quickly fallen into post-release obscurity. Sony's State of Play showcased a bunch of new features that made Horizon Zero Dawn fans squeal, like new machines, a glider, and the ability to swim underwater.
They also showed an exciting looking quest that was unfortunately not featured in the final version of the game. So if you were expecting to go on a rescue mission to liberate Erend from his captors, you are in for a disappointment. Horizon Forbidden West is a direct sequel to Horizon Zero Dawn and is superior to its antecedent in several ways and inferior in others.
Firstly, if you are planning on playing Forbidden West, then we would highly recommend playing Zero Dawn first in order to fully appreciate how the story, world, machines, characters and gameplay mechanics have developed. Although the game is certainly playable as a standalone title, it's not very kind to series newcomers and, apart from a short introductory overview of the first game, it doesn't provide much context for what will unfold in Forbidden West. We follow protagonist Aloy on a quest to find a backup of Gaia, technology that will quell a fast-spreading blight that threatens the natural ecosystem in this post-apocalyptic world inhabited by hostile machines. Aloy hopes that after obtaining several subsystems, Gaia will be able to terraform the planet's rapidly deteriorating biosphere.
The story is quite interesting, but in my personal opinion, it went a little bit too sci-fi for me, to the point where it became too far-fetched and ridiculous. The epitome of this being the introduction of new supervillains that have a large role to play in the story.
That's as much information on that we can give without giving away major spoilers, but trust us, it's absurd. It was just too silly, and even trying to describe it is so cringeworthy. They felt like they had been plucked from an entirely different game.
Another aspect of Forbidden West that we didn't like is Aloy's character development. Aloy was a spirited, kind, friendly and determined extrovert who we loved in Zero Dawn, but she has turned into an antisocial, melancholic and simply unlikable character in Forbidden West for some reason.
I grew up an outcast. Remember, I'm not much for parties.
Yeah. That one was in your honor. Just saying.
Aloy spends most of Forbidden West trying to ditch her friends, being rude to people for no reason.
We were talking about Edaman?
Yeah, okay.
And embracing a very annoying lone wolf persona who acts like the journey she is on is such a sigh-worthy drag.
You're stuck with me now. Like bark on wood.
A strange development that makes no sense considering Aloy's deep-seated need for answers and social acceptance in the first game, following her childhood of being a motherless tribal outcast. Not sure why they went in this direction with Aloy. Perhaps they were going for more emotional depth, but this massively falls short and it just comes across like she's being a troubled teenager.
The sculptor wanted something even bigger, twice the size, covered in gold and jewels. But I was quite certain you wouldn't appreciate that.
You were right.
This is definitely an aspect of the game we both didn't like, being fans of the Zero Dawn era Aloy who fought passionately for what she believed in. We don't normally like to start videos on a negative, but now that those points have been covered, let's talk about some things that make this game great.
The graphics are astounding and the game is extremely immersive, outside the immersion-breaking outrageous main story that is. The characters feel real, not only in terms of diversity, but in the dialogue, demeanours, motivations, facial expressions, emotions, and tribal politics.
The lip syncing is the best I have ever seen in a video game since Detroit Become Human. They have truly done an incredible job. You end up genuinely caring about side characters with even the most minor roles. For example, someone died not long after meeting them. Aloy merely has a single conversation with them, but because the conversation was so meaningful, interesting and soulful, it hit us quite hard.
The politics, relationship and history between the different tribes is very interesting on a macro and micro scale, rather than feeling tedious the way it does in some other games that try to include politics. An example of this is the concession agreement being pushed by the self-proclaimed leader of Chainscrape to solidify his position and claim on the Karja land currently being occupied by the Ossarum. This is only a small side plot, but it is an example of how well thought out everything is.
One thing I did notice is how well Guerrilla Games have embraced diversity and multiculturalism in Forbidden West. Some games can feel very whitewashed and other cultures and skin colours can often feel like an afterthought. but Forbidden West has successfully portrayed diversity as the norm and avoided common mistakes, such as stereotyping, vulgar portrayals, or the kind of dodgy skin colour grading found in Mass Effect Legendary Edition's version of Captain Anderson, who is so atrocious I'm surprised the community have not spoken up about this. Anyway, this is something that I really loved to see in Forbidden West, and I hope that other game developers begin to adopt Guerrilla Games' approach.
Speaking of Mass Effect, another thing that we loved was how you can interact with significant side characters, build a relationship with them, and complete personal quests for them. This is a new mechanic in Horizon and reminded us of Mass Effect 2 and how you can speak to companions in the Normandy between quests and complete loyalty missions.
It's also like The Outer Worlds in how you use the hilariously named ship The Unreliable as a base of operations where you can also interact with side characters and complete personal tasks for them.
I don't think I have ever played a game where the side characters have felt so fleshed out, and it was very refreshing. Even boring side quests were made to feel rich, memorable and meaningful because of the side character involved.
I will see you soon, Outlander.
Next, let's discuss the combat system. Forbidden West retains the real-time combat style of Zero Dawn whilst introducing some new concepts, weapons and skills that enable the adoption of different combat styles to suit your playstyle. It's a much more diverse and multi-layered, albeit arguably overcomplicated, combat system.
There's definitely more to the combat in this game compared to Zero Dawn, and considering that the general level of difficulty has noticeably increased, it makes sense that the player is given more firepower in their arsenal. The skills you can unlock are much more extensive than Zero Dawn, and are separated into 6 categories, which loosely correspond with different playstyles. There are warrior skills for people who prefer to get up close and personal with melee attacks, trapper skills for those who enjoy laying traps, hunter skills for talented archers, survivor skills improve healing and potion abilities, infiltrator skills for players who prefer to take a stealth approach, and machine master skills, which is self-explanatory and offers greater command over machines.
The introduction of unlockable special abilities called Valor Surges is a very interesting new feature. These Valor Surges assist Aloy in combat by granting unique perks, most notably the Overshield, Stealth Stalker, Radial Burst and Part Breaker Valor Surges.
The Overshield Valor Surge replicates the Shield Weaver effect by having a shield that absorbs damage and explode when depleted, harming enemies nearby. The Stealth Stalker Valor Surge turns Aloy invisible for a short time, and the duration is increased with each successful stealth kill.
Partbreaker Valor Surge makes it much easier to detach machine components needed to upgrade weapons and armour, which is extremely useful. The final Valor Surge I mentioned is Radial Burst and is my favourite. Radial Burst unleashes a powerful shockwave that damages enemies in the immediate vicinity, which definitely suits my going guns blazing, getting over my head then run away panicking playstyle, which we refer to as Panic Mage on this channel.
The Valor Surges are really special and can be unlocked as part of their corresponding skill tree. It adds an extra layer to the combat. Admittedly, the melee combat attacks can be quite frustrating because sometimes Aloy doesn't always do what you want it to do, and hits don't seem to land properly, but other than that, the combat is fantastic.
We always loved the designs of the different machines in Zero Dawn and the attention to detail, but Forbidden West takes this to another level with the integration of new and exciting machines.
We see the return of some Zero Dawn classics such as Walkers, Tallnecks and Glinthawks, but if you thought Rockbreakers and Thunderjaws were bad, then wait until you come across a Sliverfang, Dreadwing or Tremortusk. They are quite formidable, and even the smaller, less imposing machines can pose a challenge, such as those pesky Burrows and Leek Lashers. Discovering and taking on these new machines is thrilling and one of the best things about the game.
Unfortunately, Forbidden West is very glitchy. Nothing game-breaking, but seeing dead enemies floating all the time and NPCs acting strangely can really break immersion. It is funny seeing the glitches, but after a while it gets kind of annoying when we realise we have paid full price for a game that is glitchy as hell.
Since the game was designed with a PS5 in mind, it does run much better on that console. I've heard very few complaints, but do not quote me on that.
I also want to briefly mention how slow, lackluster and disappointing a certain mount you can unlock is. I'm someone who plays JRPGs that routinely implements this kind of mechanic, like Trials of Mana, Ni no Kuni, Pokemon Arceus and even Ratchet and Clank, and they all put Forbidden West to shame. You know what I'm talking about if you finish the game. Once the initial novelty wears off, it's like, really? This is all you are capable of when games 10 years old have done this much better? Anyways, moving on.
We briefly touched on the graphics earlier, but I feel like we should emphasise how amazing the graphics actually are, even on the PS4. The character designs are so realistic it's kind of uncanny. The water graphics are perfect, and the fact that you can go for a swim in this game is excellent.
What Guerrilla Games is good at is attention to detail, which is evident in the clothes Aloy wears, the settlements, the machine designs, and sometimes the smallest things can make you stop and take notice.
Like the previous game, Forbidden West has gorgeous landscapes, different terrains, weather cycles, and very interesting settlements, such as Plainsong, which looks beautiful and unique, and largely contrasts sounds like Chain Scrape.
Another aspect of this game that is great is the diversity of merchants available. There are the basic ones that sell weapons and armour, but there are also new merchants such as dyers who can change the colour of outfits, cooking merchants who create meals that grant temporary perks, and the inclusion of a workbench to upgrade gear is very interesting.
There are also melee pits where you can enter duels, and there's a tactical minigame you can participate in called Strike, which we didn't quite care for the same way we didn't care for Gwent in The Witcher 3. I know some people like these kind of minigames, but for us they don't really add much, but it does expand the world building.
But I'm sure there are people out there who would love this game within a game. It's Gameception. So give it a try and see if it piques your interest, because if it does, you can challenge lots of different people and collect game pieces.
The next thing we want to talk about is something that drove me insane when I played Forbidden West, and that's the climbing mechanic. The climbing mechanic just feels so awkward and janky to me, and is comparable to the very first Assassin's Creed game, which is 15 years old. Aloy doesn't always climb where you want her to, and it can be quite frustrating trying to traverse the environment, especially when some sections have very strong platforming elements.
In a world where we can have huge open world games that allow you to climb on anything anywhere, I found the limitations of only being able to grab onto handholds quite restricting, but perhaps I'm just spoilt by the modern Assassin's Creed games such as Origins, Odyssey and Valhalla. Speaking of Assassin's Creed, Forbidden West adopts a similar play mode mechanic whereby the player can choose between a guided or explorer experience. Explorer mode places the marker in your compass, keeping the number of HUD elements to a minimum and leaving the player to roam freely, whereas guided mode gives you waypoints, assists with directional navigation, and can help you encounter more activities.
The introduction of new gaming mechanics and gadgets alongside changes to how you use the focus means that seasoned Horizon players must quickly learn to change the way they think and how they look at and approach the environment. Aloy picks up a ton of new gadgets which are brilliant and was showcased in Sony's State of Play, such as the mask that allows you to breathe underwater, the glider, and the pullcaster that can be used as a grappling hook.
The gadgets are designed to help you navigate the environment and solve the many environmental puzzles. The pullcaster allows Aloy to pull herself towards grapple points and manipulate the environment by pulling things to reveal or create new paths and access out of reach chests.
The focus is the device Aloy wears on her ear, and in the first game it was primarily used to just scan data points, machines and wildlife. But in this game, the focus is how you see climbing points and things that you can interact with using the pullcaster, amongst other things. Admittedly, we both really despise environmental puzzles. It felt needless and an attempt to draw out the action.
There was just too many, and it felt like such a pain. It reminded us of how environmental puzzles and platforming elements were included in Doom Eternal. Personally, I play Doom for mindless chaotic violence, not to solve puzzles or play a platformer. Just like I play Horizon to roam the open world, do quests and fight machines, not solve puzzles or play a platformer.
Even the Cauldrons embrace this new style, but if that's the kind of thing you enjoy, then brilliant, you will get a healthy dose of this. Like Zero Dawn, the Cauldrons are used to unlock machine overrides and overriding, and riding machines does feel better and smoother than it did in the first game.
That's about all we have to say about this game. In a nutshell, the story and Aloy character development since the first game suck majorly, as does the environmental puzzles and platformer elements.
The combat is excellent, the graphics are wonderful, the side characters and quests are memorable, the gadgets are brilliant, and the new machines are so creative and unique. To be very honest, Forbidden West was a letdown for us, but that is likely due to how much we adored Zero Dawn. It was unlikely that anything Guerrilla Games created would have been able to live up to that.
So, should you play Horizon Forbidden West? Yes, absolutely. Especially now that it has been out a while, has gained updates and patches, and the price has dropped. I know we did mention quite a few negatives, but that's only because we want our viewers to be well informed.
Although we were disappointed with what we got and overhyped the game in our own minds, Forbidden West is far from being a terrible sequel. The game has a lot to offer and there is a lot to like, especially if you are willing to turn off your brain and immerse yourself in this ridiculous science fiction thrill ride.
We could talk about this game for hours, so if you've already played Forbidden West, then let us know your thoughts in the comments and whether you agree with our assessment.
Stay tuned on the channel for more Should You Play episodes to gain spoiler-free reviews of recent, new and upcoming games to help you avoid potential buyer's remorse.
I've been Heather.
And I've been Craig.
This is Amalgamingle, and thank you very much for watching.